Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. What a day we have today. Big legal day. Let's keep going, and we'll talk all about it. Okay, so what a day it's been. We had the press conference. Now the Mueller Report is out. Let's break all this down. Joining me is Law and Crime legal analyst Gene Rossi. Gene, are you excited today? There's a lot to talk about.
You know, no matter what side of the issue you are on, today is a very exciting day.
Now,
awesome.
You've gotten through 448 pages in the last 5 minutes, right?
Yes, and I took Evelyn Wood speed reading course to do that.
Okay, let's just first start from the beginning. What did you make of the idea of William Barr providing a summary and also providing a press conference in anticipation of this report? Is it necessary? Does it give us instructions, guidelines, what to think about as we jump into this massive document?
What he said in his press conference could easily have been put in a letter that accompanied the report. I am very troubled by the unseemliness of this process where, unprecedented, the Attorney General has a press conference announcing a report or charging decision, and he doesn't provide those documents right before the press conference or during it. So it really raises a question in my mind. Was there some collusion, if you will, pun intended, with the White House to put the best spin on this report? That is a question that should be asked. But at the end of the day, the report is going to speak for itself.
Speaking of the report, I want to let you know, all of our viewers, it's official. You can go to lawandcrime.com right now to read the entire report. Again, the full report is up on our website, lawandcrime.com. We're breaking down every aspect of this as much as we can because we're currently reviewing it. I just want to play more of the press conference if we can. I think this has just been a really remarkable day so far. Before we do, though, Gene, I just want to ask you, though, if he didn't come forward with this press conference, wouldn't it have just been chaos? I mean, for the last 2.5 years, everybody's been a legal expert trying to break down the president's conduct and everybody else's conduct to determine if it's collusion or not. If he just released it without giving some sort of announcement beforehand, wouldn't it have been chaos?
No, absolutely not. Ken Starr released his report in late August of 1998, and he issued findings and all that. He didn't have a press conference. Robert Mueller's never had a press conference. And by the way, I want to add this. Why wasn't Robert Mueller at this press conference? Why did Robert Mueller's press secretary, Peter Carr, with whom I worked in the Eastern District, Virginia, U.S. Attorney's Office, and who has a lot of integrity, why did they issue that press statement last night basically saying, we're not going? And what I've said yesterday is that it's like having a wedding and one side of the family doesn't show up.
You're saying that perhaps there's something, they're not
Yes.
fully on the same board. And maybe that's what we're going to get in the sense of as we read this report. Again, it's up on lawandcrime.com. Okay, Gene, now you heard the conclusions from the Attorney General, William Barr. What are you going to be looking for as you read the report?
Fantastic question. I'm going to look at two things. One, the Attorney General was very careful to use the word that no one in the Trump world joined the conspiracy or colluded or conspired with the Russians. What I'm going to look for in a report is aiding and abetting conduct. Conduct where an individual does not formally join a conspiracy, doesn't willfully join, but takes actions to encourage, to entice, to advise others to commit a crime. So that's the one thing I'm going to look at. Number two is on the so-called jump ball, Mueller did not make a recommendation on yes or no on obstruction, which I fault him for that. He should have said yes or no. On the jump ball, how many pro-prosecution factors were there and how many con-prosecution factors were there? How many pennies were on each side of the scale? If it was a jump ball, you know that there were pennies on a scale that said we should charge the president or somebody in his sphere. I'd like to know what those are.
You know, it's interesting, the idea of knowingly and intentionally is very interesting, because what we kept hearing this, that nobody knowingly or intentionally conspired or cooperated with the Russian government. Does that mean that they were taken advantage of? Does that mean that they were, there was information that was taken from them, that they didn't know what was going on? What does that tell you based upon what William Barr said?
It tells me this. When you have a conspiracy of two or more people, you have to have an agreement, a meeting of the minds. And clearly we had that with the IRA and the GRU, people in Russia. Clearly. And maybe some people unknown in the United States. So when a person enters a conspiracy, they enter it either they're all in and they know what they're doing, or they make the decision, hey, I know there's a conspiracy that's going on, but I'm not joining you guys, but go ahead. I really think what you're doing is going to be great for me. Or they didn't know anything. I don't think they didn't know anything. There are too many red flags and loud gongs to suggest that Trump officials knew something was going on in Russia.
That's a good point. And listen, we're going to all break it down as much as we can. We have a snippet that we're going to play for you, show you from the Mueller report right after this. I guarantee you, though, most people that are watching this are going straight to Volume 2, the obstruction of justice question, and they'll probably go back to the collusion question. But before we do that, let's take a break. A lot more to talk about. Robert Mueller's report is now out. Go to lawandcrime.com. Okay, and it wasn't just the press conference today, it's also the report. We have some of it for you. I want to show you a portion of this. I want to read it to you and we can break this down. President Trump reacted negatively to the special counsel's appointment. He told advisors that it was the end of his presidency, sought to have Attorney General Jeff Sessions unrecused from the Russia investigation, and to have the special counsel removed, and engaged in efforts to curtail the special counsel's investigation and prevent the disclosure of evidence to it, including through public and private contacts with potential witnesses. Those and related actions are described and analyzed in Volume 2 of the report. Gene, what do you make of that?
That's obstruction of justice. I charged that. I tried that. I indicted a state prosecutor for doing the same thing that allegedly the President of the United States did. And I got to tell you this, the more I look at this report, what you just showed me, William Barr's press conference was the classic putting lipstick on a pig. And it really makes me upset.
Well, let me ask you this. If it was so clear cut, wouldn't Mueller have just stated it? I mean, there was a portion of his report if he said if it was
I can answer that.
But if he said if it was so clear cut that the president did nothing wrong, we would have stated that. But why did he punt it then?
I can answer that. I haven't read the report, just what you showed me, but I've heard that they applied this clearly standard where they have to show that he clearly obstructed justice. When I was a DOJ attorney for 30 years and you're deciding whether to try somebody, the standard is this. Do you have a prima facie case of obstruction? Have you met all the elements? That's a very low hurdle. The second decision is, do you have a reasonable probability of conviction? It doesn't mean beyond a reasonable doubt, doesn't mean clear and convincing. It means basically 45%, 50%, reasonable probability. It seems that the Mueller people applied a clear and convincing standard to that second prong, and that is wrong when you're making a decision on whether to charge somebody. I'm very disappointed that the Mueller people did not decide yes or no on obstruction.
Yeah, but I want to just read you one other part, and again, this is not, wasn't said right after. This is actually page 368 of the report, I believe, and it says that Trump's acts were facially lawful and that his position as head of the executive branch provides him with a unique and powerful means of influencing official proceedings, subordinate officers, and potential witnesses. What do you make of that part?
Well, that's taken the evidence in the light most favorable to the president, and I love the word facially. Facially, he was acting within his powers, but we all know, basically, that he thought this could be the end of his presidency. And you know what? Richard Nixon, God rest his soul, is probably smiling right now because what he did was much less profound than what the President of the United States is openly doing, and we now know that they did it privately. Contacting witnesses privately to persuade them not to cooperate with an investigation, that is a layup. That is obstruction.
Okay, and here's the thing though with that, it's a determination that was made. We're trying to break it down. I want to just go back to what we can expect from this report, because as people read it, a lot of it's going to be, there's going to be some parts that are redacted. Let's learn more about these redactions from William Barr earlier today in the press conference. Okay, Gene, obviously there's going to be portions of this that we can't see, but based upon what I heard from William Barr, he's making it seem that this is not a political issue, that he wasn't pressured or influenced by anybody, that this was all a matter of law. So if the things that we don't see in this report, do you think that's justified?
I got to compliment Attorney General Barr on this narrow issue. As he described it, the process seemed to be fair. It seemed to be reasonable. They had 4 categories of redactions. I compliment him on that. Absolutely, I have to.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Gene. Please continue.
My problem with him is we got Barr's statements of, the sky is blue, all right? I want to know if in the report there are descriptions of dark clouds. And I want to know if his statements are 100% accurate. Are they 20% accurate? And if they're not 100% accurate, then shame on him for viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the president, and once again trying to put lipstick on a pig. I don't know that yet. I haven't looked at the entire report, but I can tell you this. I was intrigued by his persistent use of there's no collusion, there's no conspiracy, because there's a thing called aiding and abetting, where you can commit a crime without joining a conspiracy. He focused on collusion and not joining a conspiracy way too much for my 30-year career prosecutor ears.
That's a good point. I mean, it's always been about collusion, coordination, cooperation, but you make a good legal argument about whether or not if someone encourages or helps in a certain way.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah. Well, Gene, we have to take a quick break. I want you to think about that example. Hold it on, and we're going to be right back right after this. Well, the Mueller report is out. We are dissecting it. We are analyzing it, and you can read all of it on Law&Crime.com right now. We're breaking down William Barr's press conference. We're breaking down the Mueller report. There's a lot to discuss today. I'm back with Gene Rossi. We're dissecting every aspect of it, Gene. Now, you had mentioned something interesting earlier before. The idea that William Barr, one of the conclusions that he explained that was summarized in the Mueller report, is that there was no evidence of cooperation or coordination, or as the popular term has been, collusion between Trump, his campaign, and the Russian government or Russian officials. But you had made a point that what happens if there's aiding and abetting? What happens if it's not direct coordination or cooperation, but if someone gives tacit consent or approves of something or knows about something? What were your thoughts about that?
Oh boy, I could go for an hour. Aiding and abetting is a very broad term, and it could be a plethora of things. Basically, are you encouraging and advising and procuring the commission of a crime? Let me give you an example. You come to me and you want to rob a bank where I used to work. And I said, Jesse, I'm not going to rob that bank, but hey, if you're going to do it at 4:50 p.m. because that's when the tellers are gobbling up the money and they have their guards down, if you will. I have not joined your conspiracy, assuming you had 2 other people. I have not joined, but I have helped you, and that's aiding and abetting. What we have undisputed is the Trump Tower meeting where they were met with the Russians on potential dirt on Hillary. But here's a big aiding and abetting. Manafort, Rick Gates, and Dr. K, Konstantin Kilimnik, met in a cigar bar in New York in August of 2016. He handed to Dr. K, Manafort did, poll data. And you can draw the inference that that poll data helped either the IRA or the GRU or both, or Guccifer or WikiLeaks
Right.
determine where they're going to send their rockets of disinformation.
Well, let me ask you this, Gene. If all of that is true, then why would that not be a charge put forward in the report? Why was it limited to this idea of coordination, cooperation? Why? If they could have charged people under this, why not?
Because it goes back to what's in the report. I don't want to hear Barr's lipstick on a pig press conference, which the more I think about it was pitiful. They didn't, there is no conspiracy that they joined. Under the facts I just gave you, you didn't join a conspiracy. Manafort didn't join a conspiracy when he gave Dr. K that poll data. But in the report, I want to know, do they describe events that are aiding and abetting? And shame on the Mueller people if they don't consider an aiding and abetting charge.
Okay, well, I mean, again, we are dissecting it and seeing it, and you might be right.
I don't know.
We might be right. The thing that I want to show, though, I want to go back to the press conference if we can. This is an important point about executive privilege. I want to play that for you right now. Gene, the president had authority to exert executive privilege and probably wipe out some of that stuff in the Mueller report, but chose not to do so, according to William Barr. What do you make of that?
Trust but verify. Frankly, I'm not buying anything that Barr says until I see the report. I don't buy any of it. Here's why. He used the phrase, he was well within his power to assert privilege. Well, I can think of two exceptions to the executive privilege rule, and they probably applied in this case, so he couldn't assert the privilege even if he wanted to. One is the crime fraud exception. Privilege does not protect alleged crimes. Two, if you are intending people to talk to third parties, I ask my attorney to talk to the IRS regarding a tax dispute, and I tell that attorney information that they're going to relay to the IRS. If I give you information that's intended for a third party, that's not privilege. So I assume that many of the things that Mueller was looking at weren't protected by privilege because it was either the crime fraud exception or the third party exception. So that Hail Mary statement that he made was getting a little bit too over the skis. And that's why I'm bothered by Barr's press conference before we even have the report.
Gene, let me ask you this. I think Robert Mueller discusses this in his report, but I want your interpretation. If there really was no collusion, then can you still have obstruction of justice? In other words, can you still have the president trying to cover something up if there was no crime?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. You are a prosecutor, you serve a grand jury subpoena on my CPA. And for 40 years, I've filed perfect returns. But I'm just mad that Jesse Weber is looking at my taxes.
Right.
And I instruct my CPA, destroy documents, don't turn over all the documents. I've obstructed justice even if I haven't been a tax cheat.
Right.
So you don't need an underlying crime.
Okay, that's a really good point. And Gene, listen, I appreciate you coming on in such short notice and jumping on to talk about the Mueller report and the latest developments. I mean, we're going to have an opportunity to really dissect this. So thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. We here on Law & Crime, we're going to be taking a break. Michael Bryant is going to be signing in. I'm signing off. We have a lot to cover today, including a live trial. Let's not forget that, 12:30 p.m., Charles Merritt. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.